With more than half the world's people living today in cities and population growing rapidly, urbanization is a global issue. Every day, new migrants arrive, often destitute, having suffered the sudden withdrawal of their livelihoods because of land grabs or conflict. They may initially have little or no access to employment or basic services. In many places, urbanization is accompanied by the creation of more slums. What we mean by this simple, ugly word is more people living in inadequate living conditions that violate their human right to an adequate standard of living, their human right to decent conditions of housing, and quite possibly their human right to education and health. Perhaps I should emphasize this. Proper housing, clean water, adequate education, and healthcare are not merely commodities that are purchased or distributed by various political and economic systems in various ways. They constitute inalienable human rights of all people, regardless of their social status and origin. The right to adequate housing requires security of tenure, protection from eviction and displacement, and access to services, as well as affordability. It is about fighting homelessness, poverty, and marginalization. The process of urbanization, as well as the policies that drive and support those processes, cannot be based solely on economic and financial data that disregard the underlying human reality. Urban and spatial development should be done with and for city dwellers. This means wide consultation and participation of all inhabitants, not only the most powerful and wealthy. It requires transparent decisions and processes that include mechanisms for complaints and dispute resolution. Equitable and sustainable urbanization is a process that must ensure that duty bearers are fully accountable. Corruption, in particular, eats away the human rights of those without access to the levers of power, and this must be vigorously combated so that the rule of law can be upheld. And perhaps above all other factors, urban development must address the root causes of prejudice and discrimination that violate the principles of the equality and dignity of all. Too often, the policies and processes of urban development fail to consider the needs and aspirations, and perhaps even the very existence of the poor, people living in informal settlements, migrants, refugees, people living with disabilities, or the elderly. The voices of women, people from various national or ethnic groups, or certain castes, may not be given any consideration whatsoever. This results in city development that further marginalizes and discriminates against those most in need. Such development is economically and politically counterproductive. It cannot be sustainable, for it violates fundamental human rights, the entitlement of all to participate in decision-making processes via freedom of speech and assembly, information, consultation, and the right to vote, to name a few, is crucial to sustainable and equitable urban development. Let us work in partnership, including through our joint housing rights program, to make cities a place of equal opportunity for all, where people can live in security, peace, and dignity, and the right to adequate housing is a reality for all.